In the winter of 1892, Red Hollow sat 3 miles off any map, an unpaved smear of cabins between 2 ridges where the mist never quite lifted. Travelers spoke of it only when the sun was high. They said the earth there was iron-rich, the water rust-colored, and that the place took its name from the 3 sisters who lived at its edge, the Red Triplets. Their home was a sagging farmhouse perched above the creek, its boards the same dark red as the soil beneath. No one in town remembered seeing a man about the property after their father's funeral. The sisters, tall and identical, kept to themselves. At market they spoke little, paid in coins blackened by age, and disappeared before dusk. Children called them the Mirror Women. Adults crossed the street when they passed. What set them apart was not beauty but sameness, same hair the color of river silt, same grey eyes that seemed to share a single thought. They moved in rhythm, finished one another's gestures. Even the town preacher admitted to locking his doors on nights when the wind blew from their valley. He claimed he heard singing, 3 voices woven into one long note that rose and fell like prayer or warning. When spring came, livestock began to vanish. Hens found stiff in their coops, calves missing from pastures. Men blamed wolves until they found no tracks, only circles pressed into the mud as though someone had danced barefoot through the night. Soon whispers turned to fear. People said the sister's mother had been a healer, that she'd used forbidden words to keep her daughters alive through the fever of 73. Triple born, triple bound, they said. A blessing twisted backward. Sheriff Cole went up there once, meaning to ask questions. He returned pale and silent, his coat soaked as if he'd crossed a river. He resigned 2 weeks later and moved east. In his place came a younger man, Amos Finch, who laughed at superstition and promised to bring daylight to Red Hollow. He rode out one August morning and never came back. By nightfall, thunder rolled through the valley, and the creek ran redder than ever before. That was the summer the town stopped pretending. Doors stayed bolted, church bells rang every evening, and people began burying mirrors under their porches to ward off reflection. No one went near the sisters' land again until the letters started arriving. Each bore the same delicate handwriting, sealed with a drop of wax the color of dried blood. Inside, one line only: "We did what the family required." By February of 1893, the letters had reached every doorstep in the county. No one saw who delivered them. Each appeared by dawn, folded clean and dry even after nights of rain. The postmaster swore they never passed through his office. The handwriting, though, was unmistakable, delicate, looping, the same script used by the Red Triplet sisters when they once signed for their father's inheritance at the courthouse. The first to open his letter was Reverend Tull. Inside, he found a single pressed clover and the same line as before: "We did what the family required." He burned it at once. But the next morning another lay upon his desk, edges damp as if taken from the creek. That evening he left town without a sermon. By week's end, 3 more households reported the same, each claiming they'd heard 3 knocks on their door at precisely midnight. Followed by a faint humming, the county clerk finally summoned a search party. They rode to the Red property through mist thick as breath, the horses shying at every shadow. The farmhouse looked abandoned, windows shuttered, chimney cold, a curtain stirring behind glass, though no wind blew. Sheriff Amos Finch's horse was found tethered by the fence, its reins rotted through. Inside the house, dust coated everything but the writing desk. Upon it lay dozens of half-written letters, each ending with that same chilling phrase. The ink was still wet. 3 chairs sat side by side before the window, their cushions indented as if recently used. Finch's hat rested on the middle one, When the men searched the cellar, they found jars stacked from floor to ceiling, each holding river water and a single folded scrap of paper sealed with wax. No one dared open one. The smell was sharp and sweet, like flowers drowned in mud. As they turned to leave, the deputy swore he heard a woman whisper behind him, "Don't break the seal." The party rode back before sundown, taking nothing. That night, lightning struck the ridge above Red Hollow, setting the woods ablaze. Rain followed, heavy and sudden, washing the ash straight into the creek. By morning, the farmhouse was gone. Only its red foundation stones remained, steaming in the dawn light like open wounds. Weeks later, more letters appeared, burned at the corners, ink smeared into rust-colored streaks. Some said they came from beneath the church doors, others from inside their own bedrooms. The sheriff's badge turned up on a market stall, rusted through the center as if eaten by water. No one dared to read the new letters anymore. They buried them under candlelight, whispering prayers that no one remembered the words to. But still, the line echoed in every heart that had ever crossed that family's path. We did what the family required. The summer of 1894 came without rain. Crops withered, wells turned to dust, and for the first time in living memory, Red Hollow Creek ran dry. The valley cracked like an old photograph left too long in the sun. What had once been a ribbon of red water was now a gully filled with forgotten things, wagon wheels, fence posts, the bones of animals long drowned. Children, disobedient and curious, wandered down to the exposed bed and returned home pale and silent. One boy, barely 12, said he'd seen something carved into the earth itself, 3 names, each the same, etched in perfect circles at the creek's bend. Another swore he found a jar, stoppered tight, with a folded paper inside. When his father smashed it open, there was nothing left but black water that smelled of lilac and iron. Within days, the boy's house caught fire. Word reached the county office, and an investigator was sent from Little Rock, a man named Jeremiah Call. He kept no faith in curses or ghost tales, and he laughed when he heard the locals whisper about the Triplet sisters. "Stories for the idle," he said, setting out toward the hollow with a notebook and flask of whiskey. He never came back either. Weeks later, his horse was found wandering the ridge, saddle empty. Inside the satchel tied to its flank was his journal, water-stained, the writing nearly gone. Only a few lines were legible. "The creek speaks at dusk. 3 voices, 1 breath. The ground beneath me hums like something living. I think the jars were never meant to keep water. They were meant to keep memory." That autumn, the townspeople gathered at the edge of the hollow. They stood in silence as the sun set behind the ridge, turning the dry clay to blood. Some said they saw shapes moving where the creek once ran, 3 figures in faded dresses, walking arm in arm, their reflections clear in a bed that held no water. The oldest among them, Mrs. Calhoun, who had once known the sister's mother, began to weep. "They did warn us," she said, trembling. "They told us the day the water dies, the truth would come breathing out of the ground. By winter, the hollow was abandoned. Only the red stones of the red farmhouse remained, half buried in frost. Travelers claimed they could still hear a faint sound there at sundown. Not weeping, not wind, but the rustle of paper, as if 1,000 letters were being unfolded in the dark. By the spring of 1895, Red Hollow existed only as a scar on county maps. A survey team, sent to mark new railroad lines, camped near the ruins of the red farmhouse. The foreman's log recorded a curious note on April 12th, "Found brick foundation, cellar intact. Inside, hundreds of jars, sealed tight, some broken. Ground damp, though no water for miles." They pried open a few and discovered not relics, but paper, still white as bone, folded into identical squares. The ink had bled to rust, but one line survived on nearly every scrap: "Remember us as one." When word reached the county seat, the site was cordoned off. 2 deputies stood guard overnight. By dawn, both were gone. Their rifles lay across the steps, barrels wet as if it had rained. The logbook from the camp ended mid-sentence. The air hums underfoot, and then the page turned black with smudged ash. Locals refused to go near the place. They said that after sunset, the jars pulsed faintly, like glass hearts catching moonlight. Some nights the creek bed filled with a thin mist, and within it shapes moved, 3 outlines bending together as if whispering over something buried. County officials ordered the cellar filled. Wagons of dirt were dumped until the house vanished beneath a low mound. The men who worked that job each reported the same thing afterward: a dryness in the throat that water could not ease, and dreams of standing knee-deep in red clay while unseen hands reached up from below. When the railroad finally cut through that ridge, they found their line warped every morning. Rails shifted a fraction east, always toward the hollow. After 3 attempts, they gave up and rerouted the track. The company's report described the ground as unstable, humming. No one could explain what that meant. Years later, a traveler passing through the valley stopped at a tavern in Jefferson County. He carried a small glass jar around his neck, sealed with wax the color of dried blood. When asked about it, he smiled thinly. "A keepsake," he said. "From the sisters who wanted to be remembered." He left before morning. The innkeeper swore that after he went, every mirror in the tavern fogged from the inside. 4 years after the hollow was buried, a new sheriff took office in Jefferson County, a quiet man named Jonas Kellen, who inherited a desk, a badge, and a box of unsorted case files left behind by his predecessor. Among them, tucked between yellowed receipts and unpaid warrants, was a thin ledger bound in cedar bark. Across the front, in faded ink, were 3 letters only: R.E.D. inside. The pages told what no one had dared record: a series of investigations between 1892 and 1895. The early entries described the sisters' property, the letters, the flood, the jars. The later ones grew frantic, written in a trembling hand. One passage read, "The jars are not for memory, they are for silence. They hold what should not be spoken." I broke one. The air sang like a wire. The voices came from under the floor, not ghosts. Something older. Another note followed, dated the night before the farmhouse burned. 3 women stood at the creek. One spoke. 2 echoed. "I believe they have done what no priest or doctor can do: bind a secret so tight it hums. The earth keeps their promise." Kellen copied every page and sealed the originals in the county vault. But when he returned 2 days later, the vault door hung open, its hinges blackened. Inside lay only ashes and a single glass jar unbroken, resting in a ring of soot. He placed it on his desk, unsure whether to destroy it or send it away. When he held it to the light, something inside shimmered, not water, not smoke, but movement like breath pressed against glass. He set it down and wrote his final entry: "If anyone finds this, do not open the jar. The truth within is alive, and it remembers the ones who listen." That was his last record. Kellen vanished in early winter. The office remained empty for a month before another sheriff took his place. On his first morning, the new man found a faint humming beneath the floorboards, and a crack in the wall, shaped like 3 interlocking circles. Today, the site of Red Hollow is nothing but pasture and cedar. Travelers say that after sundown, if you walk where the creek once ran, you can still hear 3 voices at once: one singing, one weeping, and one whispering. "We did what the family required.